Craig Berube saying today, all he hears about in this market is the core, the past. Is there too much focus on the core right now?
No. And I'll tell you why. Look, no team has ever in the cap era built its roster out the way the Leafs have, where these guys have accounted for more than 50% of the cap now for a number of years. This season with William Nylander's contract kicking in, Austin Matthews making, onto his third deal, they're actually taking up more percentage of the cap. And I know that's going to change on the horizon with some uncertainty with these guys. The rising cap environment around the league is going to shift some things. But because of that, it's always been kind of an experiment. Right? And because of the way the Leafs have gone 1-8 in playoff series since most of these players have been here, and because of the fact that they've lost those series without scoring enough goals, I mean, that's what they're paid to do. And so as much as I can appreciate that, yes, it's a different team. There's half a new roster basically every year. There's a different goaltender. There's a rebuilt blue line. I do think all these things could be important down the road, but I don't see them being important enough if these players do not score big goals at big times in the playoffs to allow the Leafs to play long enough for those other cosmetic changes. And there are some important ones. I mean, I should be clear. We were praising this team up 3-0 not too long ago, and there were a lot of good reasons for that. But, the core players themselves have to produce. And they are the top 4 scorers for the Leafs in this series through 5 games. But they didn't score a goal in Game 5 with a chance to clinch at home. So that's how we get here. I mean, it's a bit of a history lesson, but, I don't think that we're making too much of it because it's just hard to imagine them having any kind of real sustained playoff run, which is what the bar is set around here, too. It's not just winning this round. It's trying to march right through the playoffs without those players having a big impact.
Scott Laughton was saying today that he actually has been impressed with how badly the leadership wants to win. I said, can you want it too bad? And he said, that's a good question. You just got to kind of embrace it. So we'll see if those core guys can unlock something in the next game.
And I should mention, though, before you move forward, I'm not questioning whether they want it.
No one is.
And we're not questioning whether they can do it. I mean, maybe in these moments, of course, that's where the question is. I mean, we've seen the point totals, the individual accolades. They're special players, but there's the consistent thing that keeps coming up. I mean, Brendan Shanahan acknowledged it last year, truly for the first time at their end-of-season press availability. They don't do it in this precise moment where we're sitting right now. We're heading into Game 6 on Thursday. If they win that game, they move on. Things start to change. These narratives shift. We maybe talk about them in a different way. And so the opportunity is at hand. We know they want it. They have to do it, and the doing has been the challenge.
Yeah, no, all those core guys are on the power play. The power play has now allowed a shorthanded goal in consecutive games. You asked Craig Berube about the 5-forward alignment. Any sense that they may go away from that for Game 6?
It certainly didn't seem to be his inclination. He acknowledged that maybe they'd discuss it and look at various things. Of course, the adjustments for this game aren't just, systematic. They could be, which players are playing where on the ice and who's in the lineup. But, the 5-forward power play has had a ton of success this season. It's had a ton of success even really in the playoffs, over 30% in this series. Just not success in Games 4 and 5 with a chance to eliminate the Senators where they're 0 for 7 combined. They let the 4-minute power play pass in overtime in Game 4. They've allowed a shorthanded goal in each game, which is kind of critical. And that was really the genesis of the question is just, do you want maybe a little bit more comfort back there, inserting a defenseman? But, I don't get the sense that they're willing to go quite that far yet. But we'll see. I mean, I do think that this is an important 12 hours between now and really the morning of Game 6, just in terms of how they prepare, what sort of tweaks or solutions they find. I didn't get the sense that they were going to rebuild the whole empire here overnight, but I do think that they have to look at some changes to come back with, I think, a belief it's going to be a different outcome.
Yeah, Craig Berube, he says he doesn't want to change much here. He doesn't want to panic. He's always kind of been that way. Is there an obvious change he can make in your mind or anything?
Probably the most obvious is putting Nick Robertson in the lineup. I mean, it's almost become a meme, but he gets scratched and he scores coming back in. But clearly, where they're looking for a goal, and as much as I am harping on the top players to score that goal, I mean, you take it if it comes from the third line or even the fourth line. And so I think that putting him in the lineup would make the most sense, and it's probably the easiest because he's played earlier in the series. He's played throughout the season. Max Pacioretty, since coming into the series, been a little bit limited. So I'm not saying this with a ton of conviction, but I do think if you're looking to make a change, that's probably the most seamless one. A little tougher with David Kampf, right? Because if we're going to talk about some things working for the Leafs right now, I think without question the Scott Laughton line has been very effective in the series. We've got to the point now where they're starting periods, they're starting games. Craig Berube is talking about them being almost like an identity line that they're hoping sort of seeps through the rest of the group in terms of how they approach the game and play. And so Kampf is been knocked out essentially by Laughton in that spot. And so I think Robertson coming in is the easy move. And then what do you do with, the second line, specifically with Nylander and Tavares? The left wing spot there has been a revolving door for a long time.
Yeah, they haven't really been able to find a consistent answer there. Max Domi started the series there. That didn't last long. Bobby McMahon had 20 goals in the season, but he's gone cold. Is he the answer? Calle Jarnkrok could get a look there a few shifts at times, and of course Pontus Holmberg started there the last game.
Right.
It's tough. Is there? There's a lot of talk today from Berube about how we can do things better offensively. Now he was asked, what, and he's like, I don't want to share that with the media. He kind of smiled, but is there kind of insight there in how he answered the question about the Laughton line?
Well, yeah, I'm going to steal his answer on that line. He talked about the way that they, basically their work ethic, their approach to checking, the way they hound the puck, that they have knocked, in his view, the Senators off balance in this series, that they've created a little bit of havoc out there. They forced some turnovers. What he's talking about, frankly, it is an effort-based, sort of idea, right? It's a bit of, paint by numbers hockey. It's not meant to be Picasso. And certainly that line you're not counting on for a ton of offense. They did, connect on the first goal of the series way back in game one. Oliver Ekman-Larsson scored it, but it was a nice play by Laughton that got the puck into the middle of the ice. And so I think he'd like to see a more attacking mentality. Basically what we like. Look at all the games we're seeing in the playoffs right now. It's just getting guys to the net, getting in front of Linus Ullmark, who's suddenly feeling more and more comfortable in the series, the Senators goaltender. I think that's worth noting. And so it's going to be just embracing not scoring a goal that's going to end up on the highlight reels or on your career retrospective, but finding a way to get a few ugly ones, because that's kind of escaped them here of late.
Jake Sanderson also growing in confidence, not just Ullmark. It feels like he's getting better every game. Big challenge because the top guys are seeing those guys. Laughton was saying he likes how they're playing, but they'd like to chip in here. They feel like they can do more and provide some offense, and the Leafs may need it. Finally, listen, I wanted to ask you, we heard from Morgan Rielly. We talked about the core four. He's part of the core. I mean, no one's seen more than him in Toronto. He's been here the longest. What is your sense of where he's at right now?
I thought he was good in the sense that I didn't sense any defensiveness. He's faced these round of questions all these years. I mean, if you're tired of hearing about it, imagine being in Morgan Rielly's skates and shoes and playing in it and having to be subjected to these questions. I thought under those circumstances, given where we are, given that it's pretty quickly here after the disappointment of that 4-0 loss in Game 5, he was pretty calm. Even mentioned, I know the media have a job to do. We respect that. And he said, we have a job to do. If we go out and do it on the ice, you know what we're talking about in the media will go different. I mean, it's not chicken and egg so much in this case. It's pretty clear, the tail's not wagging the dog. And so, I liked where his mindset was at, but, I don't know what comes next, right? I mean, it's hard to say that that's going to predict better outcome, better results. But I will say, by and large, this has still been a way less uptight group. Now, part of that might be the fact they built a 3-0 lead. That's the first time we've seen that. They were the only team in this first round to go out to a 3-0 lead. And so closing the job has always been the challenging part. And, they've got at least 2 chances guaranteed to try to do it. But they'd like to get it done on Game 6.
The one time they did win a series, they squandered a chance in Game 5 at home. Then they went down to Tampa and won Game 6 there in overtime. No practice, nobody on the ice here today from the Leafs. They did have a meeting before flying to Ottawa, and that's where we're going, Chris. We're heading to the airport, and we will see you in Ottawa for more talk ahead of Game 6.